Your lawsuit has ended. The Diesel brothers are sharing their side of the story. A federal judge ordered the custom truck makers to pay more than $800,000 to the U.S. government as well as Davis County.
But the Diesel brothers say their business was targeted.
A viral prank that put a diesel truck on national television eventually led to lawsuits, jail time, and the collapse of one of automotive TV's biggest success stories. After a video exploded online and caught the attention of Jay Leno, two truck builders from Utah suddenly found themselves with a Discovery Channel series and millions of fans. What followed was 7 seasons of larger-than-life builds, outrageous stunts, and reality TV success. But behind the scenes, legal troubles were beginning to mount. A federal lawsuit was filed, an $11 million trademark judgment followed, and one of the show's biggest stars ended up behind bars. So, what really happened, and how did it all fall apart? Join us as we uncover the real story. The prank that built an empire. The story of how Diesel brothers went from a social media page to a Discovery Channel hit is one of the most organic origin stories in the history of automotive television. And it started with something that had nothing to do with business strategy or television planning. David Sparks, who would eventually become known to millions of viewers as Heavy D, started his working life in the diesel world by opening a truck dealership in Utah. He was not a trained mechanic in the formal sense. He was a person who genuinely loved diesel trucks, understood what made them interesting to other people who shared that enthusiasm, and had the kind of natural showmanship that translates well to a camera. He turned to Facebook and YouTube early in the dealership's life, not because he had a content strategy, but because he needed a way to attract customers, and digital platforms were the cheapest and most accessible tool available to him. David Kiley, who would become Diesel Dave, met David at a church singles event in Utah, and the friendship developed from that unlikely starting point into a business partnership. The specific incident that cemented the idea of working together involved Kiley accidentally putting regular gasoline into his diesel truck, an error that prevents a diesel engine from running at all and requires a complete fuel system drain and flush to fix. He called David for help, and sitting there dealing with the misfueled truck, they talked about what they could build together. They brought in Keaton Hoskins, who became known as The Muscle, and Joshua Stewart, who became Redbeard. The 4 of them built the Diesel Sellers operation, making videos for YouTube and Facebook that documented their builds, their pranks, their stunts, and the general atmosphere of a shop where people were genuinely enjoying what they were doing. The content had an energy that sets authentic material apart from manufactured entertainment. One specific video stood out. Diesel Dave pulled a prank on a friend by using a diesel truck to pump a massive cloud of black exhaust smoke into the bathroom the friend was using. The video spread online until it reached Jay Leno, whose television segment, Prank You Very Much, was specifically built around entertaining video pranks. Leno featured the Diesel Sellers crew on his show, bringing them national visibility they had never previously had, and gifting the victim of the prank with a gas mask equipped with a toilet paper roll, which is both specific and genuinely funny. Discovery Channel saw what happened when the crew appeared on Leno and made contact. The network had been moving away from its original documentary-heavy programming model and toward unscripted reality content that combined entertainment with a specific professional world. Diesel trucks, custom builds, elaborate pranks, and 4 big bearded men who were clearly comfortable in front of a camera represented exactly the kind of package that was working for the network at that moment. It took 2 years of conversations before the deal was finalized, partly because Heavy D and Diesel Dave were initially convinced that the phone calls from Discovery Channel were some kind of scam. The idea that a major cable network would want to make a show about them seemed implausible enough that they brushed off the early approaches until they were persuaded the interest was genuine. Diesel Brothers premiered on Discovery Channel on January 4, 2016. The first episode followed the team turning a rusty 1948 Willys Jeep into a diesel-powered custom build while simultaneously finding their next truck giveaway at a gas station. The show the audience discovered was something slightly different from anything else on cable television at the time. And what made it different was the thing that later became the center of the biggest legal crisis in their careers. So, what was actually happening inside those truck builds that made the show special and made the lawyers interested? Why millions stayed glued? Diesel Brothers was not simply a show about fixing trucks. It was a show about transforming trucks into machines that exceeded every reasonable expectation of what a pickup truck could do, look like, or sound like. The builds that became the show's signature were not modest improvements. They were wholesale reinventions of vehicles that started life as ordinary working trucks and finished as something that did not look like it belonged in the same category. The crew built 6-door pickup trucks. They built semi-amphibious off-road military vehicles. They built trucks with enough suspension lift to park a standard sedan underneath them. They built machines for specific competitive events, including Monster Jam, where their builds competed against some of the most recognizable vehicles in motorsport entertainment. They built custom rigs for giveaways, which were a significant part of the show's audience engagement strategy. Viewers who purchased products from the Diesel Sellers website above a minimum spend threshold were entered to potentially win the trucks being built on screen, which created a direct commercial connection between watching the show and participating in its outcomes. The show was considered one of cable television's most popular unscripted series, with men aged 24 to 54, which was precisely the demographic that both Discovery Channel and the automotive parts and merchandise industry most wanted to reach. The audience was not simply watching for entertainment. They were watching because the trucks represented an aspiration, a version of what a working man's vehicle could become if the right people got hold of it. And the specific practice that was most visually distinctive about the Diesel Sellers operation, the one that had built their YouTube following before the television show existed, was rolling coal. The deliberate release of thick black smoke from a diesel exhaust, produced by removing or bypassing the diesel particulate filter that normally captures the soot and particulate matter before it exits the engine, was a signature moment in their content. It was dramatic and unmistakably diesel, but it was also a federal crime under the Clean Air Act, which explicitly prohibits tampering with vehicle emissions control equipment regardless of the purpose for which the modification is made. However, the practice was widespread in diesel truck culture, well beyond anything Sparks Motors or the Diesel Brothers show were doing. Emissions defeat devices were a significant underground market across the United States, and enforcement by federal regulators had been inconsistent enough that many operations in the custom truck world treated the modifications as standard practice rather than as legal risk. What made the Diesel Brothers specifically vulnerable was the same thing that had made them famous. They had documented everything on camera and put it online where anyone could find it. So who was watching those videos closely enough to build a legal case from them, and what did they find when they actually tested what the trucks were doing? The lawsuit that came from the very content that built the brand. In 2017, a group called the Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment filed a federal lawsuit in the United States District Court for the District of Utah. The defendants named in the filing were Heavy D. Sparks, Diesel Dave Kiley, Joshua Stewart, Keaton Hoskins, and others associated with the Sparks Motors operation. The lawsuit alleged a specific and documented pattern of conduct. The defendants had deliberately and systematically removed pollution control equipment from diesel trucks in violation of the Clean Air Act, and had then sold those trucks to customers who operated them on public roads in Utah, contributing to the air quality problems that the physicians group existed to address. The evidence gathering was not complicated. The physicians group purchased an actual truck from Sparks Motors and sent it to a laboratory in Denver for professional emissions testing. The results came back with measurements that were difficult to dispute. The truck emitted 36 times more pollutants than a properly functioning vehicle with its emissions controls intact. It produced 21 times more particulate matter than a vehicle meeting federal standards. Beyond the laboratory testing, the attorneys for the physicians group had access to something that most defendants in environmental cases do not provide for their opponents: thousands of hours of video documentation. The YouTube content that had built the Diesel Sellers brand, the pranks and builds and coal rolling that had attracted millions of subscribers, and eventually the attention of Jay Leno and Discovery Channel, was available publicly and in searchable form. Heavy D offered context for why the modifications existed and why customers wanted them. He explained that the diesel particulate filter becomes clogged at around 20,000 miles of use and can cost upwards of $5,000 to replace at a dealership, bypassing the filter costs between $500 and $1,000. From a customer's perspective, especially for working truck owners dealing with the economics of maintaining a commercial vehicle, the financial calculation was straightforward. From a legal perspective, the financial motivation did not change the nature of what was being done or its status under federal law. The show continued airing through the years that the lawsuit was working its way through the courts. Season 2 aired in 2017, Season 3 in 2018, Season 4 in 2019, Season 5 in 2019, Season 6 in late 2019 and into 2020, Season 7 in 2021. Discovery kept commissioning new content while the legal case built toward a ruling that would eventually change the conditions under which the show could be made. In 2020, United States District Judge Robert Shelby handed down his ruling. The court found that the defendants had violated the Clean Air Act through the systematic removal and bypassing of diesel emissions control equipment. The language the court used in describing the conduct was not neutral. The ruling described the behavior as flagrant. The financial penalty ordered was $851,451, which was to be paid across various parties, including the federal government and the Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment. In addition to the financial penalty, the court issued a permanent injunction ordering the defendants to stop performing or advertising emissions tampering modifications. Then the Diesel brothers decided to appeal. So how did the appeal go? And did it change anything that mattered? The legal pressure from two directions. Heavy D. Sparks and his co-defendants appealed the 2020 ruling to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. The appeals process took over a year. In December 2021, the 10th Circuit issued a 53-page opinion reviewing the district court's findings and the legal arguments from both sides. The appeals court upheld the main findings of the district court. The Clean Air Act violations had occurred. The Utah Physicians for a Healthy Environment had the legal standing to bring the enforcement action as a private citizen group. The conduct had been flagrant. The court did find that certain aspects of the penalty calculation required further proceedings in the district court, which provided some partial relief, and the penalty was eventually reduced by approximately $225,000 in January 2024. But the core of the finding and the core of the financial obligation were affirmed. The injunction remained in place. The fundamental legal reality of the situation had not changed. And while the emissions case was moving through appeals in Utah, a completely separate legal dispute was developing in New York that had nothing to do with exhaust pipes or particulate filters, but that carried a significantly larger dollar amount. The Italian fashion brand Diesel, which has been operating under that name since 1978 and had built trademark protections covering the Diesel name across multiple commercial categories, filed a complaint in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York in 2019 against Heavy D Sparks and Diesel Dave Kiley. The complaint targeted the Diesel Power Gear merchandise operation, which sold clothing, hats, accessories, and branded items through a physical storefront and through websites including dieselsellers.com. The fashion brand's argument was that the Diesel Power Gear name and the way it appeared in commerce, on a physical retail storefront and across multiple website domains, was confusingly similar to the registered Diesel fashion trademark in ways that created genuine consumer confusion about the source of the products. A federal court granted partial summary judgment in the fashion brand's favor before the damages question went to a full hearing. In 2023, Judge Jennifer Rochon of the Federal District Court in New York ruled that Diesel Power Gear and Diesel Sellers owed the Italian fashion brand $11.8 million in damages for trademark infringement. The name that had been the foundation of the entire brand, the word that appeared on the merchandise operation, the websites, the storefronts, and in the title of the television show, was found to have been operating in violation of an existing trademark that predated the Diesel Sellers business by more than 3 decades. The combination of the two cases created a financial and legal picture that was genuinely difficult to navigate. An environmental penalty approaching $1 million in federal court in Utah, an $11.8 million trademark judgment in federal court in New York. Both cases run simultaneously, and the television show that had been the platform for the brand was quietly ending while all of this was playing out. Season 7 of Diesel Brothers aired in 2021. After that, new episodes stopped appearing on Discovery Channel. The network never made a major public announcement about the cancellation. Fans noticed the absence before any official statement acknowledged it. Heavy D and Diesel Dave pushed back against the assumption that the lawsuit had directly caused the show to end, saying the return to YouTube represented a genuine creative preference for the freedom of the digital platform over the constraints of a network schedule. The show, as it had originally been made, built around the specific content that rolling coal and emissions-deleted trucks had provided, could not be made in the same way after the injunction. Whatever Discovery Channel and the production decided about renewal, the material constraints on what the show could be had fundamentally changed. Those constraints did not appear in any cancellation announcement. They were simply the quiet reality underneath the silence. So, what happened after the show ended? And where did the legal story go from there? The arrest that shocked everyone. The emissions penalty that had been ordered by the federal court in 2020, confirmed by the appeals court in 2021, and partially reduced in 2024, had never been fully paid by the time 2025 arrived. The court had ordered payment. The payment had not materialized in the form the court required. In June 2024, the court found Heavy D Sparks and B&W Auto, his company, in contempt of court for failure to comply with the payment orders. The court issued another order requiring payment. In January 2025, the court issued a further order. Court filings documented that Sparks had been required to deposit proceeds from the sale of company assets into a court-controlled account. When those funds were not delivered as the court had directed, the judge concluded that every other available tool for compelling compliance had been exhausted. On October 2, 2025, a federal judge issued a bench warrant for civil contempt. At approximately 7:30 in the morning on October 7, 2025, David Heavy D Sparks was arrested and booked into the Salt Lake County Jail. This was not a criminal arrest. Civil contempt works differently from criminal prosecution. The purpose of the jailing was to compel compliance with the court's orders rather than to punish a criminal offense in the traditional sense. The story broke simultaneously across automotive media, mainstream news, and social media. The phrase "Free Heavy D" appeared in posts across multiple platforms within hours of the arrest being reported. His supporters argued that the penalties were excessive, that the ongoing litigation represented regulatory overreach, driven by what they described as overzealous environmental enforcement, and that a man who had built trucks for a living and made entertainment from it was being crushed by a legal system that was not proportionate to the actual harm involved. Heavy D himself had been consistent across many years of addressing the lawsuit publicly. He said he regretted some of the past modifications. He acknowledged that some punishment was fair. He maintained that the ongoing scale of the legal obligation, particularly after years of additional legal fees accumulated on top of the original penalty, had grown to a point that felt disconnected from the original violation. He said he had not set out to willfully break environmental law. He spent 3 days in the Salt Lake County Jail before being released on October 10, 2025. The judge ordered his release after both parties reached a stipulation in which Sparks agreed to provide specific financial disclosures within 10 days of release. The release was not the end of the legal proceedings. It was a pause in a case that had been running since 2017, and that showed no sign of reaching a final resolution that all parties would accept as complete. The arrest put the entire Diesel Brothers story back in front of an audience that had largely moved on since the show ended, and it forced a renewed public conversation about the question that the show's quiet cancellation had never properly answered. So, do you think the punishment fit the violations, or did the courts go too far? And if Diesel Brothers had never been hit with those lawsuits, do you believe the show would still be on the air today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.